In this chapter, we are going to explore the different approaches for participatory methods to design sustainable development solutions. We are focusing on tropical forest landscapes to illustrate this case. But before we go into the particularities of tropical forest landscapes, let me go a little bit into the conceptual aspects of participatory planning. There are different ways of describing participatory planning in action. I think it's very useful to distinguish between three types of participatory methods. The first is the cosmetic approach for participation. The second is the utilitarian. And the third is empowerment. The cosmetic approach is when an externally designed project arrives in a particular setting, and whoever is in charge of managing this organizes a meeting to take a picture, basically. It's not to change the original design, it's basically to inform people that this is going to happen, and this is a very nice project, and they should all welcome this project. So it's more to legitimize something which is externally designed. That's the cosmetic type of participation. The utilitarian type is when I have a project externally designed out of my own ideas or of my institutional ideas, and we arrive in a particular location, but we need some location-specific informations. So it's utilitarian in that sense. I will use that information, which is a part of the knowledge of local people, to improve my project. So just like the cosmetic one, it's still an external project, but in this case, there's a use of local knowledge just to inform better the implementation strategy of this particular project or program. And then there is the third category, which is the empowerment type of participation. In this approach, the project is not externally designed, it's designed locally with the engagement of the local actors in a truly participatory fashion. This is much less frequent, is much more difficult, but in my experience is the most likely to get real results and successful results. And why is that? For several reasons. First, because having the engagement of people in the outset, in the beginning of the project, is essential to have not only the local knowledge, but more importantly, have the ability to capture the dreams, the wishes, the desires of those who are the most relevant. Because these people are very likely to be there beyond the lifetime of the project or the program. So if the program is designed on the basis of their thinking, then it's more likely that this will be something lasting beyond the period of this project. And also, this is likely to result in greater engagement because people will buy in this project because it reflects their own ideas rather than someone else's ideas. So the effective engagement becomes more productive and yields better results. And the third component is that it reduces costs because you can have participation in a way that local people bring in some inputs to the project and the external agents bring other inputs. But you end up reducing some of the costs. For example, labor for a particular action, you can have a group work to build a school, for example. We have done a number of times this. We bring in just external inputs, and then local communities put in their labor and they build a school for them. So it actually becomes something that is more efficient in the long run. I'd like you to keep in mind these three types of participatory planning and action, and I strongly recommend that you work on the empowerment type of participation. It's not easy to make this happen. There are many elements of participatory planning, and I'd like to share with you some of my experience in making that happening. In the case of our activities at FAS, we run about 150 workshops per year. And the design of workshops is very tricky. First of all, you have to have the timing right, because if you time the workshop in a period when there is abundance of fishing, then people are not likely to come to the workshop and stop fishing, because fishing, for example, in some areas are dependent on migratory fish. So there's just that season to catch those fish. So timing is very important. Second is advance notice. Forest communities are oftentimes poorly connected through communication, so you have to send the word in advance so that people eventually are informed. And also they have other things to do. Indigenous peoples have very busy agendas. And this came to me as a surprise when I realized this many years ago, because I usually thought that busy people were those in Wall Street or in busy cities like Bangkok or Jakarta or Sao Paulo. But no, they have a busy schedule. So they have their agenda, their calendar. So you have to negotiate the timing so that it doesn't conflict with their other activities with advance notice. And then you have to have the appropriate setting for that particular workshop. The setting means which is the location, how accessible it is, where people can sleep, how is the food going to be organized, logistical issues which are critical. Then comes in the design of the workshop itself, the opening session, how it works, introduction of participants. All of this should be very carefully planned. And among the reading materials that you have is a manual that we have written for the Bolsa Floresta program in the Amazon that I think it's very useful as a reference because it's a methodology that we have improved over the last 10 years. A lot of attention to details. So having the agenda right is important. Keep track of time. We have some tricks. For example, those who arrive late receive a penalty that we call in Portuguese a prenda. A prenda is a social penalty that a person is required to do something funny. So everybody decides maybe to pretend to be a monkey, so the person has to perform as if he or she was a monkey. So there are these things so that the meeting begins on time and finishes on time, and food is served at the right time. So all these details are very important. Then comes the end. At the end, it's very important to have clear outcomes, clear conclusions. And remember, not everybody is literate. So if you write down, not 100% will get it. And people oftentimes don't wear glasses as they should. So it should be written in big letters, not much text. Oftentimes PowerPoints don't work. The way of writing that up or spelling out the conclusions instead of the external person, one of the participants, spelling out what is the outcome or which are the conclusions, the follow-up activities. Be very clear on what are the responsibilities that you, as an outside participant of the process, is responsible for. And then that's the end, and then you have a clear agenda for the next steps. And having finished this participatory planning process, then there is the challenge of follow-up. It's essential to build trust. And in order to build trust, you cannot fail with the commitments that you have made. It's essential to do the follow-up very rigorously because that's essential to buy trust. And then the next step is indicators. You have to have indicators of success, indicators of management, of different activities. For example, we keep track of the percentage of people who are invited relative to those who actually attended. And in our case, it's very close to 100%. Sometimes it's even greater than 100%. That means more people come than were invited. And this is a result of trust, because people, after having gone to several workshops, people tend to lose interest. But in our case, because we do a lot of these tips that I've been mentioning to you, people do come back and do participate in workshops over the years, because they yield results. That's very important too. We should not do participatory planning processes that are good for things that don't result in concrete action. We have to have concrete action, and we have to have good indicators of this. And finally, in terms of evaluation, I think it's very important to evaluate this participatory process through a variety of methods, through the opinion of local participants and the opinion of others. We have done a lot of polls, and polls are very useful as well to assess how good this particular activity is delivering the results that have been promised.